Whenever we speak of premises, we have to think about the assumptions to be made when the plan is being carried out. Whatever the alternative you are choosing, it must be most feasible. Permutation is selection of various alternatives. Combination is arrangement of them. There should not be any negative consequences because of this alternative. Hello everyone, I am Purnima, faculty in the Department of Commerce, Vidhyaashram Pre-University College, Temple of Excellence. So in continuation of my sessions on planning, I am coming to the third session on planning, which involves the steps in planning process. So we all know that planning is bridging the gap between the present and the future. So we should know how to plan for the future. So how do you plan for the future? So what are the various steps involved? Just let us discuss this in this session. Now, we all know that planning is important for any business, but whether planning ensures success or not, that is different. But we have to have a plan to attain the objectives of the organization. Now, when you are planning, the first step is setting the objectives. So, what is the objective? So, this is the objective here. So, objectives. So, we should first decide what are the objectives of the business. So, this becomes very, very important. Now, the objectives may be set for the entire organization. So, you can set the objective for the entire organization and each department or unit within the organization. So, that depends on the planner. So, either you plan for the entire organization or you set up objectives for each department. So, let us look into what are objectives. So, objectives or goals specify what the organization wants to achieve. So, objectives or goals specify what the organization wants to achieve. So, when you are setting up an objective, we will be indirectly telling our employees what is the kind of work you are expecting from your employees. Then, it should be stated clearly for all departments, units and employees. So, when you are setting the objectives, it should be clear. There should be no confusion. There should not be any question mark, no uncertainty. So, you should be very, very clear when you say that what is the objective of the organization. So, for each department, so objectives should be stated clearly for departments, units and employees. So, why they should be clearly stated? Because they give direction to all the departments. So, what each department has to do, so this will be decided based on the objectives. Then, in the next step in the planning process is developing the planning premises. Now, what is this planning premises? So, premises means it may be any building or anything. But when you talk about planning premises, we think about the environment in which the planning will be executed. Here, whenever we speak of premises, we have to think about the assumptions to be made when the plan is being carried out. So, planning is concerned with the future, which is uncertain. So, this we all know. So, we don't know what will happen in the next moment or the next second. But we always plan for the future. So, whenever you are planning for the future itself is uncertain. But then, every planner is using conjecture about what might happen in the future. So, the planner has to just project, he has to apply his mind and see what will be the future environment of the business, and based on that he has to draw up his plans. So, he is required to make certain assumptions about the future. For example, the sales forecast. So he may forecast there will be a sale of 1 lakh units, but in actual it may not happen. So there are certain assumptions which he has to make. Suppose he is drawing up a sales plan, or he is drawing up a production budget, or he is drawing up a production schedule for the next year. So which will be based on the sales forecast. So for the sales forecast, so if he is forecasting a sales of 1 lakh unit, then he should ensure that the production department has 1 lakh units produced for that year. So in the beginning of the year, or as and when the stocks are exhausted. So all this he has to see. So if the production department has to produce 1 lakh unit, then he has to ensure that the raw materials are supplied. He has to ensure that the proper human resources there, proper technology is there. So everything should be there. So while developing the planning premises, so there are various assumptions that are drawn. So based on these various assumptions, the manager should know how to plan. So he should, whoever is involved in planning should be familiar with the use of the assumptions. So he should know that what are the assumptions which they have assumed, and then based on that the plans have to be drawn, and forecast can be made about the demand for a particular product. So after you are having proper data, you collect proper data and then you can forecast. So forecasting is based on proper analysis, proper collection of data and analysis and study of data. Then it may be also about the policy change. Suppose suddenly the government has a change of policy and it declares your product as unsafe for human consumption, then almost all our sales plans or all our production plans will fail. So whatever you have produced will be just rotting in the godown. So we have to look out for the policy changes which will be made by the government, and also the interest rates. So interest rates also keeps on changing. So whenever any organization runs, it needs lot of funds for the day-to-day activities. So it all depends on the working capital which is supplied by the banks at interest rates. So these interest rates will be usually adjusting these interest rates to control the inflation trend in the economy. So all this will have a bearing on the company's financial position. Then prices of capital goods, tax rates, etc. So all these things will have an implementation of our plans. So that is why when we develop the planning premises, we will be taking into consideration all these things, and only then we will be drawing up the plans for the business. Then next, third important step in planning process is identifying alternative courses of action. So we need to know what are the various courses of action available with us. So once objectives are set, assumptions are made, the next step would be to act upon them. So we should know clearly what are our objectives and what are our assumptions, and then only we can just act on them. So there may be many ways to act and achieve the objectives. So and all the alternative courses of action should be identified. So whenever a plan is being implemented, we have to just look into or study the various alternatives available in front of us, and then after evaluating each alternative only, we have to decide on the next course of action to be taken. The course of action which may be taken may be either routine or innovative. So routine means, so whatever we have been following all these years, the same course of action we may take, or we can adopt an innovative way of doing the things. So identifying the alternative courses of action. So this is the third step in the planning process. So you look into what is the best way to reach the objective, and also the various alternatives available with us. Then the next fourth step in the planning process is evaluating alternative courses. So what is the alternative in front of us? So there are 5 ways of doing the job. Then we have to evaluate each way of doing the job. That is, we have to weigh the pros and cons of each alternative. For each alternative, what is the advantage, what is the disadvantage, we have to discuss, and then each course will have many variables which have to be weighed against each other. So in one alternative we may have many merits and few demerits, and in another alternative it may be only full of demerits only. So everything has to be evaluated. Now, how do you evaluate each alternative? So it can be in this basis. So what is the best course? What is the better course? What is good? What is average? What is bad? What is worse? So we have a criteria for evaluating the alternative. So which alternative is worse? Which alternative is bad? Which is average? Which is good? Which is better? Which is best? So for each alternative, if you can have an indicator like this, then we will be able to decide on the best alternative. So when each alternative you are discussing, you should take into consideration the various variables which will be affecting the alternative. Then we have to make accurate forecast in conditions of certainty, uncertainty. So we have to make accurate forecast under conditions whether it is certain or uncertain, and then vital assumptions for these proposals. So whenever you are making accurate forecast for the future, so whatever you are making assumptions, they can be converted into proposals. Then the next in the planning process, that is the 5th step in the planning process, is selecting an alternative. So you will be just having various options before you to implement the plans. Now you have to select the best option before you. So all these are ruled out. So these are the various alternatives which are ruled out, and this is the chosen alternative. So selective and alternative, this is the real point of decision making. So this is the point of decision making where you just narrow down upon one alternative. That is the real point of decision making. The best plan has to be adopted and implemented. So once you have evaluating the alternatives, then you adopt one alternative and see that it is implemented. The ideal plan would be most feasible, profitable, with least negative consequences. So whatever the alternative you are choosing, it must be most feasible, that is with minimum resources and maximum benefit. So you should be able to see that you make use the least resources, but it gives maximum benefits, most profitable with least negative consequences. So there should not be any negative consequences because of this alternative. So after evaluating all this, you zero down on one alternative, and then based on that alternative, you take a decision. Then this in the planning process, the subjectivity and manager's experience, judgment and intuition plays an important part. So whenever you are selecting an alternative, the subjectivity, that is what is the thing under planning. So for what you are planning, whether you are planning for the sales target or whether you are planning for the production target, so depending on the subject, you have to decide subjectivity and the manager's experience. So how experienced the manager is, his judgment and at times his intuition also will help in selecting the most viable alternative. So all these things, so when you are deciding on an alternative, so the subjectivity, experience, judgment and intuition play an important role in selecting the best alternative. Then the manager has to apply permutation and combination. So we all know what is a permutation, what is a combination. So permutation is selection of various alternatives, combination is arrangement of them. So we have to select the best possible course of action. Then the last but one step in the planning process is implementing the plan. So we all know that plans have to be formulated, and once they are formulated, we cannot just leave it at that. It has to be implemented. So implementing the plan is concerned with putting the plan into action. So you say that the plan is being executed, or the workers are putting the plans into action. So that is, you are actually doing what is required by the organization. So this step would also involve organizing for labor and purchase of machinery. So all these things will be putting the plan into operation. So you have a plan of producing 1 lakh units for 1 year. Then you just think of what are the various raw materials you need, what is the labor you need, what are the other resources you need to put this plan into action. So all these things will amount to implementation of the plan. That is, you are executing the plan. Then the last step in the planning process is follow-up action. So what is this follow-up action? So you can see this person is pointing fingers at somebody. So how I told you to do this, but did you do? So that is what he is trying to tell that other person. That is the foreman or the supervisor. He is just pointing fingers at the worker. So what was your target and what you did not achieve? So follow-up action to see whether plans are being implemented and activities are performed according to the schedule. So once you just see that plan is being implemented, you cannot rest. So you have to see that the plan is being implemented as per the schedule. So whatever we have decided, we have to see that it is being implemented. So monitoring of plans is equally important. So every time you have to go and see, you have to monitor, you have to supervise what the worker is doing, whether the work is going as per our plans or whether the workers are deviating from the plans. So all these are equally important. So why it is important? To see that the objectives are achieved. So these are the various steps in the planning process. Hope you all understood this session on planning process. Thank you.